Hey everyone, I'm Streak. Believe it or not, I've been playing this game since December of 2020 and have been consistently in the top ranks for the entire game's existence. I won or got second place in every major tournament in the beta and spent most of the last month of the beta as the rank 1 and 2 in the North American leaderboard, playing every role. If you're only interested in the tier lists, I'll be showing them on screen now. Stay tuned for more explanation. If you're interested in what the tier lists look like at the highest level of play, I'll show what they are approximately like on screen now, but won't be explaining them. With that in mind, I'm bringing two quick tier lists, one for each role, based on the balance I experienced since launch as well as the micro patch. Most of this tier list was created before the micro patch, but thankfully the micro patch doesn't really affect anything in it. I'm going to try and keep an average player in mind for this tier list, so depending on your ELO or opinions, this may not be 100% accurate. Also keep in mind that the tiers themselves are not ordered. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to go through each character in alphabetical order, starting with Aimi. Aimi is very strong right now, arguably overpowered. She has some of the strongest and most versatile abilities in the game and has a very wide number of awakenings and gears she can effectively use in both roles. She has very strong core control and damage right now, probably a bit too much damage and control, but she can be a bit difficult to pilot for newer players. She could easily be S tier as a goalie in the hands of an expert, but due to her difficulty, she'll be A tier for most. Due to the current meta, she gets a bit outclassed in the midfield by some of the other picks as well as being difficult to pilot. So that's why she's going to be a B tier forward for now. Asher can feel a bit restricted after the recent changes to her primary and the way it scales with size, but as a goalie, Powerhouse Pauldrons does a good job making up for it. As a goalie, she feels a bit slow and low range, but she has arguably the best anti-stuffing power in the game, which is why she is at least a B tier goalie. She still has insane stuffing potential and is one of the simplest forwards in the game, which is why she's in the A tier. In the higher elos and with some better teammates who can get you the core, she might be the strongest and least interactive forward in the game right now. Pick up some size and stagger and she becomes a difficult threat to deal with that most players and goalies won't know what to do. The micro patch nerf didn't really affect her at all, even though it sounded big. There isn't much to say about Atlas as a forward. He doesn't provide much, if any, offensive pressure other than scoring with his abilities, which are relatively weak for scoring. An easy D tier forward. Conversely, Atlas is easily an A tier goalie only because his ultimate is difficult to use and not very high value in the current game, and he becomes S tier with any of his strong awakening synergies, notably Twin Drive. Atlas at his base is a great defender with lots of utility, but with certain awakenings, he becomes an unscorable god. Drekar can be a strong forward and high elo with coordination and in the hands of an experienced pilot, thanks to his strong core control and fairly good damage. But since his playstyle is very unintuitive and requires a lot of situational knowledge as well as a fair amount of coordination from his teammates, he isn't someone I would recommend playing right now. He still can be good, especially with certain awakenings, but this limits him to just the B tier. As a goalie, Drekar is a fun option with a surprising amount of defense and utility, scaling and becoming surprisingly annoying with projectile range, but it isn't anything to rave about. B tier. Dubu can be a fun off-meta forward pick. He suffers from a lot of the same issues as Atlas forward, but has more size and better abilities going for him, which can make him a decent scorer or controller. C tier. While not the strongest goalie, Dubu provides an easy to pull off kit that is still fairly strong defensively, especially in the lower elos, thanks to his large size that can make up for mistimed strikes as well as simple to use abilities, making him a solid B tier pick for most. Unfortunately, in the higher elos, people know how to play around his weaknesses, and the inconsistency from his secondary and specials clunkiness make him difficult to recommend for high elo players. Era is a well-rounded forward who's quite restricted when it comes to awakening choices, which can be a good or a bad thing. If you're good at striking and controlling the core, she can be great and has a surprising amount of knockout pressure and damage between her special and primary. She has some of the best core control in the game, and the combination of pressure and control she provides right now for how easy it is to pull off makes her an S tier midfielder. Just the ability to permanently shrink an enemy prevents them from being able to play the game. Era can be a fun goalie that helps buff her teammates, but without a way to increase her swarm size and range consistently, her buffs don't do enough to make up for her defensive weakness, leaving her in the C tier. Estelle is quite a strong forward right now for most skill levels. She does great damage and knockback and might be one of the best forwards in the game for her well-roundedness and scoring or gate-taking pressure. She's also fairly simple to pick up. Aim at the core and opponent and use your abilities, putting her in the A tier. Her only issue is that she's been nerfed a lot from her glory days and has relatively long cooldowns, which is more noticeable of an issue when playing as a goalie. Estelle provides a lot of clearing and forward pressure as a goalie, but suffers from long cooldowns and being difficult to pilot. B tier for most, but can be A tier for more skilled pilots, with the caveat that she needs hotshot to function well. Juliette is a strong and fairly simple striker. She does a good job scoring and knocking people out, especially considering she's the only striker who can consistently knock out unstaggered targets. She can get countered pretty hard by evades and requires some ability to combo abilities and understand positioning, which is why she's only A tier. Her dash punch combo in the hands of a good player could easily be an S tier pick. Juliette Goalie doesn't provide any defense or offense really, and there isn't really any reason to pick her over anyone else, leaving her in the D tier. For some reason, Juno is currently the highest damage character in the game by a mile. Each of her abilities and the slimes themselves do an insane amount of damage as well as provide amazing control. Pair that with the fact that she's super easy to play considering the slime AI can just play the game for you by targeting the gates or net, and the fact that they can be controlled and hit the core super hard makes her an easy S tier. And she only gets better the lower elo you go. And even if gravity tells you that the monumentalist nerf kills her, she's still completely broken. While she probably isn't the worst goalie in the game and gets a bit carried by her damage output right now, she's fairly hard to pull off on defense and requires a good team to do well, which is why she's D tier. I'm not sure how much there is to say about Kai Goalie that hasn't been said already. He's a pretty simple goalie with one of the best and most well-rounded kits in the game. His barrage is single-handedly the best defensive tool in the game right now and probably the best anti-core flip tool in the game. His speed and giga make him mobile and allow him to have a ton of offensive pressure as well. His simplicity is why for the average player he's the only S tier goalie in the game right now, even after the micropatch nerfs. As a forward, Kai isn't bad by any means and functions similarly to a ranged Asher by trying to stuff gates and goals with his barrage. He has some decent control with his speed right now, but he's kinda just a worse version of Era that is easier to kill and provides less utility. He's only B tier, but give him a go if you like being fast. After the switch from the training system to the awakening system, Luna is struggling a lot as a goalie right now. Having to make a choice between having offensive pressure with eject button and defensive power with strike shot leaves her in an awkward position. She requires good teammates to make up for those weaknesses and a good pilot to use her strong damage and pressure, leaving her in the C tier. She unfortunately also suffers from the save evade issue as Juliette, rendering her special as an energy check. Personally, I think she's pretty underrated as a forward, especially considering how fun she is, but due to her weaker control and difficult to execute damage, I can't put her higher than a C tier. At this point, everyone knows about the synergy between Rasmus and the map Aimi's app. People don't seem to realize how strong he can be on the other maps as well. Rasmus offers a really nice balance between damage and control and fills a pseudo midfielder and brawler role. He dishes out a fair amount of damage while also having high scoring pressure. He's also just a really fun character with great MVP music, so he must be A tier. Rasmus is also a really fun and underrated goalie, but his playstyle is confusing and requires a better understanding of the game and character to pull off, leaving him in the C tier. His hook is especially a great tool against core flips and he has a decent amount of damage, but I'd only really recommend him if you're looking for a fun pick. Rune suffers a lot from poor awakening choices right now. As a forward, he provides very low damage or kill pressure and has awkward and difficult to use core control that isn't even that good when fully mastered. Even after the relatively large buffs in the micro patch, it feels like he needs to start with Monumentalist to really even be worth considering. It also doesn't help that he's relatively difficult to play and fairly team oriented as a forward. C tier. Rune has seen some niche play as a goalie but suffers from the same problems he does as a forward. After the buff, he isn't a terrible choice and can have some crazy defensive sequences with his pillars acting like mini Atlas expanses, but it's going to be far too difficult and easy to mess up, resulting in own goals for most players. For those reasons, he's only C tier, but he can be fun and become strong with some good awakenings. X is a terror on the field right now. His special is extremely unfun to play against, and it's obvious why. It makes him and his strikes massive, giving him a huge amount of control and KO pressure at the same time. He's one of the simplest characters in the game and outputs tons of damage and pressure even though much of it can be evaded. He's an easy S tier and only becomes better with size awakenings and awakenings that further empower his special. While a lot of people consider X to be the worst goalie in the game, it isn't true. He is relatively weak and C tier, but he isn't entirely useless. For the same reason his special is good as a forward, it's also good on goalie as a way of becoming larger than even Dubu and having your strike wars become free wins. He's very potent at protecting himself from pesky melee characters with all of his abilities as well. Zentaro is a cool and flashy character who unfortunately performs a bit without his core awakenings. To really be strong as Zentaro, he needs preferably both, but at least Super Surge or Perfect Form to be better than B tier. He can still perform some interesting mix-ups and get KOs, but it's a bit underwhelming without those awakenings. Zentaro Goalie is fairly comparable to Juliette Goalie and doesn't really offer much, leaving him in D tier. It can be fun to goof around with it in normals with the eject button, but your teammates will probably report you for picking it in competitive. Let me know what you think of these tier lists and if they helped you. Leave a comment with your own tier list or tell me what you think should be different. I also just want to take the time right now to thank you all for reaching 100 subscribers. I didn't expect this much support so quickly and I greatly appreciate it. Come tune into Streak_OS to watch me play live, and don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications for the algorithm. I'll talk to y'all soon, but for now, peace out.